All right, everybody. Hello and welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Dr. Lee Whitmore. I'm the Executive Director for the Grammy Music Education Coalition, and this is our seventh weekly Hub Live virtual town hall. We kick these off to support and connect with both our coalition members, there are more than 70, and all the music educators, administrators, and students that we serve as a coalition. Um, to support learning from home, teaching at home, and a whole lot more during this very challenging time that we're all experiencing with the pandemic. So, the Grammy Music Education Coalition, just to give you a little background, has one mission, and that is to increase public school participation in music education by students. And we do that in a variety of ways. And we have been on this journey for a few years. And some of the folks that you will see and hear from on our panel today have been doing the work for decades, or their organizations have. And we're really very excited. Today, our moderator for the conversation is Dr. Ryan Zellner. Ryan is our Grammy Music Education Coalition Director for Strategic Education Programs. And I will let him introduce our guests. I know all of them. And to all of you, I'm super grateful that you're taking the time today to share and spend time with us here in our audience. Today's conversation is about what modern and contemporary music programming does for the music classroom, and I know a number of our guests are very active in making things happen with technology, with contemporary programming to engage students in a really deep and amazing way with music education. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Zellner. And thanks in advance to everybody who's on the call today. It's great to see you here. Ryan, it's all over to you.
Greetings, everyone. We're excited to bring you the next edition of the Grammy Music Education Coalition Virtual Town Hall. And we're very excited about the group we have today. And as Dr. Whitmore mentioned, we're going to be talking about modern music programs, but I've also asked the organizations that are represented here today to talk about things that maybe have pivoted or changed for them as an organization, things that they're doing to engage students or teachers or the community, or those sort of things they see as changing in our music world. As we know, with the COVID pandemic, a lot of things have altered and our shift has altered, but we realize that delivering a quality music education to students is extremely important. So today we have David Sears from the Grammy Music Museum Foundation. Sorry, David. We also have Steve Benz from Little Kids Rock, Chio Feinler from Save the Music, Brandon Pankey from the Dash program in Philadelphia, and also Live Nation Urban, and Bruce Warren from WXPN. So we're going to start off with David today to talk a little bit about the Grammy Museum and the foundation and what they're doing and some of the things that they've maybe pivoted to or changed or just they thought of as their thought process is going through this new environment that we're all living in. Take it away, David.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. And just a little bit about my background for those who may not know me. It includes being a music professional, primarily in performance, production, and other creative areas of the business. But concurrent to all of that, I was also a high school music educator for many years in Los Angeles. I'm a voting member of the Recording Academy and joined the staff almost 26 years ago on the education team that I now lead for the company. The Grammy Museum Foundation is one of two nonprofit charitable organizations of the Recording Academy. The other being the Music Cares Foundation, which has a focus of addressing human resource needs for those who are making a living in the music community. Grammy in the Schools is the umbrella name for all of our education programs that we do at the Grammy Museum Foundation, locally, nationally, and regionally. With them, we strive to recognize and reward excellence, increase knowledge of the importance and impact of music and music education, and we provide tools and opportunities to help teachers and students improve. So what are we doing during this pandemic? Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, all of our initiatives have gone online for this summer. Grammy Camp will be online. But what we've also done is we have launched our Grammy in the Schools Knowledge Bank, which we hope to grow over the months and years to be a hub where educators, parents, students, and young professionals and lovers of music can go to and contribute content as well as download content that will be helpful to them in their musical journey. We're facing a new reality. When asked to be on this panel, modern band was mentioned as the topic. In some quarters, modern band in schools has been a bit controversial. I'm not sure why. Well, actually I am, but it has been a bit controversial. That, coupled with much of music education being taught in the same manner as it was 60 plus years ago, caused me to ask myself some questions. I think we all should consider and take another look at how we teach music, what we teach when teaching. Are we teaching music with performance as a component, or are we teaching performance with primarily performance as the desired outcome? Should we be doing more with more than band, orchestra, choral instruction with a sprinkle of jazz thrown in? I think it's important to think deeply about these things and even more. We've been forced out of our comfort zone by this pandemic. Many have found creative and wonderful ways to continue providing quality education to their students, and we applaud them for that. But that also brings up the question, will we go back to that comfort zone when things normalize? Should we go back to that comfort zone? And will normal even be the same? I believe we've got an opportunity here. An opportunity to expand what we do and show additional ways how music education contributes to making students college and career ready. We find ourselves being concerned over cuts like we were in the 1970s. What does that tell us about how we've been advancing advocating for music education in the last 45 years? Are we going to sit back as educators and continue to let organizations like NAM, like the NAM Foundation, NAFME, and other groups be our advocacy groups, and while we sit and really not engage with them to help make them more effective? What are we going to do about that? Are colleges and universities preparing future educators for the realities of teaching music in this century? If not, how do we fix it? I hope that I and my colleagues that are on the panel with me today will be able to incentivize those of you who have, I almost said tuned in, who have logged in to think of some answers that may help us all raise the level of music education and raise the level of importance in the minds of the quote unquote great unwashed of music education. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. And some really great points about envisioning what a music education, this gives us an opportunity, right? As we take a step back and say, how can we envision a music education program? I know when I started teaching in public school in 1998, I remember having the thought at one point that what has changed here since the late 70s or 80s? It was the same method of delivery, the same program, the same everything going on. And I know in the music world as it stands now, the music education world, there's many people that are scared almost of what's going to happen with my music program, right? But if we take a step back and say, this gives us an opportunity to reach as many students as possible, reinvent the program, and also advocate for the importance of reaching all students in this time that expression is needed and we have to tap into the social emotional learning skills, it really gives us an opportunity to connect with our students on a brand new level, on a one-on-one level that maybe that you wouldn't have had in the past as a concert band director or marching band director and doing those things. Like, you know, as bad as it sounds, when I'd have the 30 or 40 freshmen come in, I'd be like, okay, I'm busy. I'm not going to learn your names right now, you know, because we're getting ready for football season. And like that level of disengagement was a real thing, maybe practical in a sense, but not meeting those needs. And I think this gives us an opportunity to really look at what are the programs that are we offering? How are they being delivered? And how can we reach all students regardless of their background or the status of where they're in? And really gives us an opportunity to see sort of the next generation. You know, what's the 21st century music education and what does it look like? And as we engage everyone, as we engage with our panelists, and they have a wealth of background, knowledge, and skills, please feel free to put some questions into the chat, and we'll get them on air, and we'll get them back to you, and allow them to answer. And one of the organizations that we're fortunate to have with us and really tackling this modern music education for the last last couple decades here is Little Kids Rock, and we're pleased to have Steve Venz on from Little Kids Rock, and we're going to pivot to Steve right now.
Hi everybody, thanks Ryan. David, those were great points that you brought up, and I think the advocacy thing is going to be really important for people to keep in mind. So particularly as we continue to move forward into the fall and even into the following school year. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, as well as what does it mean to be an advocate. I think that's more important than ever. I would like to just talk a little bit like through our phase, or what we went through in terms of thinking of providing really resources for our colleagues and friends as we went through this crisis. Many of you know that Little Kids Rock has been around for 18 years, providing professional learning and curriculum, musical instruments, and community through Facebook and so on, and our Modern Band Summit. Well, in March, all of that changed. Surprise, surprise, right? As like David said, we shifted to virtual, but I want to just explain like the phases we went through. We're actually going through this process through 3 specific phases. The first one had to do specifically with from March, the middle of March until now, which is what can we do to support our friends and colleagues as their kids and themselves stop going to school and they grapple with this virtual learning. Like that was really important to think about. And so that's what we focused on, and that's what we've been focusing on during this time. The second part of the phase is now we're looking forward into the summer. So how are we going to help prepare teachers as they come back to school during this time with it, asynchronous blended learning that we're going to see, limitations on how you deliver music. You know, or if you're a choir teacher, are you going to be doing what you did before this in the fall? And most of you, or many of you, have seen what the ACDA had presented. So answer, most likely not, right? Or within the band, or is there, as you probably have been hearing, there's probably not going to be the football game you'll be performing at, or having everyone show up into the classroom. What does it mean to play a wind instrument? All these questions that are swirling around. So our goal is to prepare not just modern band teachers, but all of our friends and colleagues who are teaching music, kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And then the third part of this phase that we're looking at is in the fall. So once the teachers go back, what can we do to provide the continuing support and training, and to really be part of that, to really be thinking forward, because we could actually do some of the heavy lifting for them. So so just to go back, like during what we've shifted from, some of the key things that we looked at is like, what are the things that occurred when the shutdown happened? So many of our students don't have their own instruments at home. So how do I provide virtual classes if they don't have their instruments? Like I'm in Los Angeles here. I drive by a school, or I go for a jog and I run by the school, and I still see like the elementary school, the tether balls hanging from the poles, and the cones outside, which normally is picked up. But people left school, and then they left school. They didn't come back. And same with kids and their colleagues teaching. So what do you do with that? And the other part of this is like, what are the subjects that really matter at this time we can take full advantage? I know that I've talked to many of my friends, and again, as a music teacher myself, like David, for many years, and an administrator too in music. Like I've always tried to carve out time to teach composition. This is a great time to do that, to really think about that, since you can't do composing. So that's one of the key things that we were focusing on. The other part is as we transitioned, we really focused on providing lessons. So that could be video lessons on various things, including how to provide a lesson without instruments. But as we shift from teaching with a lesson per lesson, it's really been changing from lessons to units. So how can I really think in the long term of providing a unit? And then the last part of this, I would say, in terms of the trainings that we're doing, is like thinking of like the other part is when kids come back to school and during this time, you know, they're going to be impacted and affected in emotional ways, and mental health is going to be a major factor. So how can we support them during this time and as they come back to school as music educators? So social and emotional learning is a key component of this. So what we've done, and also the other part of that, is how to provide virtual training. So with that being said, what we've done is we've created a prototype. We're doing things like working with teachers, a training that we're working with, and we're going to expand. It's like with 35 trainers within a school, or excuse me, not trainers, 35 music teachers. And they're not just a modern band teacher. They're not just, you know, in that category. They're K-12. How do they teach composing through songwriting, for example, and folding in those components of a unit lesson? How do I fold in social emotional learning through that? So, the kids are creating compositions within their small groups, whether it's Soundtrap or other platforms, so like BandLab and so on. So they could create music that reflects what they're feeling and being able to express themselves. And then as we move forward is like creating trainings where people could get certification and also focus on what they do when they come back into the classroom. Maybe I've never taught modern band in my life, and maybe the only thing I could do is teach guitar. So providing training just in guitar, providing training in a way so when teachers are able to go back in, they could, maybe it's just ukulele, things that are non-wind training, and really help them in terms of like the online support they would give to the students, as well as like when we would work with the teachers on the delivery as well as how they deliver it. So those two main aspects of this. So
Thank you very much, Steve. I think one of the interesting, transitions that Kids Rock has gone through is the idea of delivering this face-to-face training, and then all of a sudden, how do you not try to necessarily recreate the training as it was just virtually, but what are those other aspects that you can bring in? And you mentioned composition and just songwriting and how important that is. And this gives us an opportunity to connect over those social emotional learning skills with having students express what they're feeling, which many times, and especially I've talked to several professors about this larger ensemble experience and what that could possibly look like if you're looking at like a typical concert band or choir or something like that. But what this really gives us is an opportunity to hear individual expression. Not only do the students be able to intersect with their feelings and what they're going through, but then they can also share that out in a way, and you can use those technologies to help sort of bridge that gap. And one of the panels that we did a while back was with educators, and how the idea of learning these new technologies, they've given themselves some space to say, okay, what is actually out there in the world that I can access and put together that makes sense and gives me the opportunity to learn a new skill and say, okay, couldn't do this before, but now I'm going to include Soundtrap, or I'm going to include these other programs into this space that normally I wouldn't have given that space to. So I think it gives us some good opportunities from there, it was just exciting to hear about.
Yeah, and I would say at this time too, I mean, the thing is, as we're moving forward, school administrators are thinking, like, how am I doing all of this? How am I going to incorporate my music teacher? And I know, talking to various people, they're like, some teachers are like, they are provided the opportunity to teach right now, and some are not, right? I think that it's really important for them to lean in on the social emotional learning aspect of this, because school administrators some of them don't know what it means to have a quality music education. They don't even know, some of them don't even understand the purpose of having music instruction in the school, right? But they will understand like how important this is for the mental health of their kids. And at the end of the day, advocacy is all about grassroots. So if I were still in a class, or not, obviously not in the classroom, but I mean, if I was still teaching right now, I would really tie in closely, connected to parents, the students, and being able to describe the value, particularly during this time, and not just put it simply in, I'm teaching kids how to you know, perform and compose in music, so, and respond. Yeah.
Right. What a strong sense of advocacy then you have, right? You see the parents are there, or parents there, or guardian, that they see the student creating, writing songs and intersecting with that, and then maybe sharing them out, or, you know, writing a songbook, or whatever it is. What a sense of advocacy just in that terms of like the parents and the principal administrators of this is the power of music. This is what we can all do together. Thank you very much, Steve. We're gonna pivot to Chio from Save the Music Foundation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Chiho Feinler. I'm a Senior Director of Programs and Policy for Save the Music Foundation. Just a little bit about us, for those of you who may not know, we have been founded in 1987. Our mission is to help students, schools, and communities reach their full potential through the power of making music. And we do this through donating instruments, which, you know, I might be the most analog person here out of the group of five. That last really 20 years, we've been only delivering those band or string instruments, mainly those analog instruments. And then we just recently added the general music instruments, as well as the J. Dilla music technology, so into high school. So this is beat making, songwriting, producing, and audio engineering and such. And we have 8 schools now, high schools across the country that are recipient of theirs, that grant of instruments. And we also are doing this really, we exist because we want to support the music teachers. And of all of this combined is why we exist, is the very thing that we've been talking about, which is that advocacy. We want to advocate the music education. So in order to receive our grants of instruments, for instance, the school must hire a certified music teacher teaching during the school day in a dedicated classroom, which, as Mr. Sears, Dr. Sears, and Dr. Benz, but all of you kind of mentioned that it is really now more than ever. That's really a hard, a good advocacy that we should be doing. And so, what do we do as an analog organization, or just kind of hoping and advocating for those schools to happen during the school day, in the school building, in the classroom, when they go virtual? So we went virtual as well. So we shifted everything on computer. I'm sitting in my home office in Northern Jersey. And as we are still supporting teachers and students, because even though the school buildings are closed, learning never stops, right? So the first thing we did was that we put together a distance learning kind of an online resource page that we were able to push it out on Friday the 13th, March 13th, when the fateful day of many of the schools started closing down the buildings. And we were able to push it out, and that, really resource page, which initially on that day was about 20 resources, mainly from our great partners, and, including Little Kids Rocks, the Teacher Zone, to, Grammy Museums resources. So, some of us here, our friends, resources to the for-profit organization companies like Smart Music, Music First, what have you, kind of opening those resources free to our students and teachers. So we put it out there. Then we also started, instead of us usually visiting a compliance visit in the classroom, we convened the teachers and administrators, as well as the teachers and administrators, in this case, arts administrators, online. So we are now doing, we have kind of logged in 27 meetings online where a number of teachers and administrators gather. And at first it was kind of like almost like an AA meeting, like talked about, our issues and the challenges that we had. And, one teacher would say, well, we can only do the paper packet because my school district does not have enough Chromebooks. And even the Chromebooks are there, my kids are not getting the Wi-Fi because mind you that we, almost 100% of our school and school districts are Title I, very high needs districts, mostly urban, but also rural. So the broadband access is very limited. So, and then kind of everybody is really talking about, we don't know what we're doing, but we're making the best of it, or we're doing our best, and kind of a feeling okay about it. So in terms of the mental health and the social emotional learning, I think it was really important for the teachers to accept that and just being able to create the space for that. So we have been really been able to reach out to 34 partner districts in 17 states, as well as Washington, D.C., 121 unique teachers and administrators join in, and many of which became a repeater. So we have about a total attendance of 388. And also then became a peer-to-peer learning space where one teacher would lead, he just done for the first time ever, virtual choir. So he shared with their fellow teachers and said, this is what I did. But guys, it was 3-minute video and it took me 80 hours to do this. And also here are the platform that we use. And this was a free one. This was a really free one, but it was a little bit tricky to use. Kind of like really sharing, kind of everybody was on the same baseline and sharing out those things. And same thing with administrators, we were able to bring in some of the speakers like Dr. Scott Edgar, who champions in the social emotional learning and music education, to talk about that, how they can plan on, or somebody from Lynn Tuttle from NAFME talks about the federal funding and what they could do for advocacy. Then, and as consequently, one of the administrators reached out to their state rep and now got onto the planning task force planning board to plan for the reopening. So that's been really great. And then just last week, we just launched a virtual hangout space for high school students. So we had about 50 plus students among 7 different cities. And we had producers as a guest speaker. We had a gigging musician. We had a musician who toured with Beyonce, getting on and just really playing for the students her trumpet with a track, really kind of enjoying that. And with a finale of a talent appearance, Fat Joe came on, and the kids had a chance to interact. And after the fact that they are really kind of enjoying, the opportunity. And now I'm tasked to do this again this week and next week, and hopefully more. So all of this are very first thing that we've ever done. As an, that we've been only doing the band and strings, and now kind of taking it all up. And as we kind of as reflecting on what we do and then the new normal, but also as we go back to the school building, I think we have, as an organization, decided that we will still continue those items. So we'll still continue to support online sharing of the resources, but also doing these virtual meetups, which really kind of became a great community. I think that David and Steve, you talked about kind of the mental health and also like the advocacy, but also advocacy amongst ourselves, that we are the best resources as a human. So we're not physically together, but we are almost together even more. So for us, even we were just doing the one-way conversations of just ourselves to the schools, but it's now between the teachers across the country. So the web of the communication has become bigger, and we're kind of lifting up together. And hopefully that would continue to do that.
Thank you so much, Chio. We do have a question. Can you share the meeting dates and times? People would love to join.
Right now, we're making it for the kind of especially for the students one, for the security purpose, we're making it as a closed meeting, but stay tuned. We're looking to make it more public in coming times. So please do stay tuned.
That's the answer right there. Stay tuned, and they will make them more public as it goes through. So if you're joining us in the middle of the broadcast here, we have with us some great panelists that are talking about their organizations and what they're doing to meet the challenges of today's music education environment, and also how to reach as many students as possible through music education in this space. So we have David Sears with us from the Grammy Museum Foundation. We have Steve Venz from Little Kids Rock, Chio Feinler from the Save the Music Foundation, just finished up. Coming up is Brandon Pankey from the DASH program and Live Nation Urban in Philadelphia. And we also have Bruce Warren from WXPN, and also, I guess director is the right word, of the World Cafe Live. So next up is Brandon.
Cool, thank you, Ryan. My name is Brandon Pankey, and I am Executive Director of the DASH program, Destined to Achieve Successful Heights. And we teach students about the business of entertainment and really focus on students in urban communities. A lot of young people want to be in front of the camera. They want to be the artist, or they want to be the athlete, but don't understand, all of the opportunities behind the scenes to be the entertainment attorney, or to be the marketing manager for an artist, to be the sports agent for an athlete. And that's where we focus on, really teaching the behind the scenes and the business aspects of the music industry and entertainment industry in general. A lot of our focus is in the School District of Philadelphia, where we currently work with about 6 schools, as well as Baltimore City Public Schools, where we have 1 to 2 schools annually that we work with. And we focus more on songwriting and production, because we notice that having that hands-on instruction really gets students invigorated. And then myself and the 2 co-founders of the DASH program, Michael McArthur and Jerome Hips, we are still currently active in the music industry. So bringing that real world experience into the classrooms is really enlightening for a lot of young people. What we've noticed since March 13th, when everything kind of shut down, is that kids need to be refocused, right? You're trying to teach them virtually, and they may not have the excitement or the passion to learn history or to learn some of the subjects that they would be in school with. And so I think having these modern music elements, teaching them production, teaching them songwriting, teaching it from professionals has been super, super important. Within the School District of Philadelphia, we partnered with multiple schools outside of the schools that are in our original scope. And we have a lot of kids learning production elements, learning songwriting, and then also learning about the business, how to be a manager, or how to be, in marketing, because ultimately some of these things that you're learning, such as being in marketing or such as being an entertainment attorney, you can apply to any field. And I think that's what's important. I think Steve and Chio spoke about a bit, that social and emotional learning, how to make sure that students are engaged and continue to be engaged. I'm gonna put on my other hat, the Live Nation hat. So as you know, because of what's been going on, live shows have been completely shut down. As a part of my role in Live Nation Urban, I run business development and operations. And what I would do is take a lot of our cohorts of students, and they would come to festivals that I would help to produce, such as the Roots Picnic in Philadelphia or Broccoli City Music Festival in Washington, D.C. And they would actually intern and help backstage so they can understand the production elements of a festival. Well, they can't do that right now because all shows are shut down. So I think utilizing more of a virtual space for students to learn certain things, but then also, how do we really bring students back and get them re-engaged when they'll be out of school for about 6 to 7 months when the school year is supposed to start in the fall? I think it touches on what Steve really talked about earlier on, and that's really engaging them from a social and emotional perspective. So we're working on a music mentorship program where we would bring in music executives that look like the students that we work with to come in and to talk to them about their past, their career past, where their passions are, and really grow. And I think really keeping them engaged from that perspective. And ultimately, when we're talking about emotion and social learning, music connects all of us. And so that's why it's important for all of us to be on this panel today, because I think what we each do brings in a certain level of learning that you just can't have when we're talking about traditional subjects. What we're doing is bringing in kids who may not have an interest in learning in a traditional way. Because when you're learning songwriting, ultimately that's English and literacy. When you're learning production, that's math and science. You're learning critical skills, but you're learning them in ways that are fun for you. So I really want to, thank the School District of Philadelphia and really all the school districts nationally for trying, for at least wanting to be a part of what we all are doing on this panel today.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I've had the distinct pleasure of working with the DASH program in Philadelphia over the last year or so. And a couple of things that, as Grammy Music Education Coalition really looks at the data behind what's going on with music participation. One of the programs that was implemented in 2018-19 as a brand new music program in one of the high schools in Philadelphia immediately saw 30% of its students participating in the music program that Dash helped implement in that school. During the day with a full-time music teacher, as well as an increase of about 10% in overall student attendance because of getting engaged in these music programs in a real way. And it's also about opportunities, right? You look at what kind of opportunities can you get to engage these artists that are out there in these contemporary programs with the things that are happening in the school. And one of the things that happened early in the fall was that we actually hosted the John Lennon bus at one of the high schools in Philadelphia, and we had the rapper Kevin Gates come out, and just an amazing experience for the students to be there and to intersect with that. And you think about the energy and effort and you fall in love with that. You know, it's about an experience, and that's what gets you hooked in, whether it's in the career of music, or you're looking at a career of broadcasting, or you're looking at just being, you know, the next YouTube star. As we know, there's millions of them right now. So, but it's ways of how do you tap into that creativity and get students engaged in something that they're really passionate about. And please keep the questions coming in. I've received several via the comments and also via people messaging me on the side. So I got like a few for you, Steve, as we come back around. But next up is going to be Bruce Warren from WXPN. We are extremely pleased to have you here, Bruce. If you can join the conversation, that would be great.
Thanks, Ryan. How's everybody doing? Hey, thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. I kind of feel like I'm a bit of an outlier because I'm not directly involved in music education, although I want to, you know, I sort of work at a radio station here in Philadelphia. But I will bring it back to a couple of the points that some of the folks on the panel have already talked about. First of all, I've been working at WXPN for a good chunk of my career. WXPN is owned by the University of Pennsylvania. We are a contemporary music station. We are a nonprofit. And our mission at WXPN is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It is to connect musicians with audiences. And everything we do leads directly back to that. I'm from Philly. I will tell you, I'm a proud Temple alum. I'm also a graduate of Penn's Organizational Dynamics Department program. I've been teaching at Penn for the last 5 years, and I've been teaching at Temple the last year at Klein. So, you know, on one level, I don't really think of myself as an educator or a teacher, but on another level, I have a lot of interaction with young people who, I guess, you know, ultimately want to get into the music business. So I think I'm more aligned with the kind of work that Brandon does versus, you know, some of the actual real formal music education in a classroom experience. So I've been at XPN for 30 years. I'm the program director. I'm responsible for the terrestrial programming. I'm responsible for digital. I'm responsible for social media. And I'm also the executive producer of World Cafe, which is a nationally syndicated show that's distributed by NPR. So I wear a lot of hats, but one of my favorite hats that I wear is meeting with new young musicians who want to learn, you know, how to build community, how to become better musician, how to do better social media. I also, one of the other things I really enjoy doing is we have a lot of interns and work studies here at the radio station. And these are all typically people who want to get into the music industry, more along the lines of sort of what Brandon was talking about. You know, they want to get into publicity, they want to do promotions, they want to learn production. So almost every day I spend, you know, in some way or another, doing some kind of formal or informal teaching about music or about the music industry. So, you know, what's changed? A lot has changed. A lot has stayed the same. You know, if you're a creator, I think this is an amazing time for creativity and innovation. If you're an educator, I think it's also an amazing opportunity time to encourage creativity and innovation, especially in the social and the tech space. You know, I read an excellent article in the New York Times earlier this month. I've been spending way too much time online every night on Instagram Live, watching all these musicians break down these barriers and to connect and connecting directly with fans. There's a level of intimacy that is poignant and beautiful and sloppy, and quite honestly, very optimistic. But I read this article in the New York Times earlier in the month. The article was called "How Hip Hop Royalty Found a New Home on Instagram Live." And I was really struck by a comment that the author wrote in this. He said something like, social media is as potent an instrument as any keyboard or drum machine and requires just as much study. You know, you know, I think what's really interesting from an educational point of view, there's a lot of energy going on right now in the social media space. And I think it's exciting. There's a lot to learn from it. Learning online, you know, going back to a point that I think Steve made, you know, how do you deliver the sort of in-person teaching and educational experience to a synchronous or asynchronous environment? You know, I had the luck, I guess, of teaching an online class at Penn for the last 3 years. So I know how to use Zoom. But just because you know how to use a platform doesn't mean that you actually use that platform, you know, effectively in the same way that you can translate an in-class experience to an online experience. Learning online in virtual settings really requires new awareness, new sensitivity, attention to a different kind of detail with students or colleagues. Listening is different. Reflective listening is different. Discussions are different. And, you know, these are all things like, you know, when you know the dance when you're in the classroom, how do you actually take that experience? How do you take that dance and evolve it into an online situation? And I'm encouraged. I think universities, I think, are really coming to the table with certification programs. The more you do it, the better it gets. And ultimately, you know, I think there's a rhythm, there's a body language around teaching in an in-person situation that we have to challenge ourselves to find in a virtual setting. But I'm very optimistic. And like I said, this is a great time for us to encourage creativity and innovation. And I really appreciate your opportunity for giving me a few minutes to talk today.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is this idea of breaking down barriers. You know, you talked about watching the Instagram Live of being able to see these artists in real life, right? And how they interact and their personality. And often so much it was a show before. And I remember a music teacher in New York City once said to me, I didn't think I could sing until I heard Kurt Cobain. And then all of a sudden it was like, if he can do it, I can do it too. And the idea of breaking down this real life barriers of seeing these, maybe not necessarily overly produced, but very produced shows that you're realizing that music is comes from you, and it can be really personal, and it can be really raw, and it can be really direct, and still have a lot of meaning for what goes on. And I think that opens the doorway for a lot of students that are out there, or just people that are out there, to start creating music. You know, as a music educator, you always have people coming to you and saying, I wish I could sing, or I wish I could play an instrument, or I wish I could do this stuff. Well, the opportunity is now. The time is now. You can do it. Everyone can do it, right? You just have to connect with that. I think so many times we've put certain musical or art forms on a pedestal, and you're like, how do I reach up to that pedestal as it goes through? So I think there's, you know, breaking down that barriers becomes very important as we look ahead.
Ryan, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I forgot to say one thing. Chio, you talked about a musician, a trumpeter, who was part of some program that you did. I'm pretty certain you're talking about Arnetta Johnson, right? So a big shout out to Arnetta Johnson.
Yes, sir. She was fabulous.
Talented, and a wonderful human being. So I just wanted to shout out her name. She's absolutely.
Yes, from Camden, New Jersey. She was fabulous.
Yeah. Wait, hold on, because I need to shout out Arnetta as well. I'll finish it off. Jill Scott, who's part of our one of the people that we manage underneath Live Nation and Maverick. gave her a scholarship under her Blues Bay Foundation for I think her first 2 years of college. Arnetta is phenomenal. So shout out to Arnetta. That's it. I'm done.
We should have had her on the broadcast. Seems like we could have worked it all in. So I got a couple questions here, and Steve, I have two of them that are going to go to you. I'll give them to you one at a time. So is there an anticipated timeline for Little Kids Rock to unveil some of these resources and support for the fall? So is there a basic, like you're going to have them available in August or July or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So the answer is yes. So just a couple things really fast. If you're not part of our network, please go to littlekidsrock.org. It's just exactly how you would spell it, littlekidsrock.org. You get resources there. But yeah, so we already have the professional learning model, and we're planning on rolling things out we've taken the prototype and we're tightening things up. And so we're going to start rolling things out in June. Just a couple of things that are really concrete dates that you can look forward to. We are going to have a virtual Modern Band Summit, and that's going to be July 15th, 16th, and 17th. What's exciting about this is it's going to be different than being in person, which is the bad news is, as many of you know, like being there in person in Colorado, there's nothing like it. Someone had explained it to me when I was there and said, Jesus, this is just like a Tony Robbins conference for music education. So it doesn't look like Midwest Conference or anything like that, right? But anyway, we'll have that on July 15th, 16th, and 17th. And we're going to take full advantage of some of the artists who are obviously not touring and who are committing to be part of this. Many of our presentations are tied into what's going to be needed in the fall. So again, how do I do this blended learning model? We're going to have a thought leadership group as well. That'll be involved with that. So that's part of this. Another thing is I believe on June 2nd, we just launched a thing called Today I'm Your Music Teacher. And so we did it a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and we'll do something on June 2nd. Again, it'll be in the afternoon. I think I'm not sure who the artist is this time, but I know the last time it was the gentleman who works with us, Jim Pederick, Eye of the Tiger, who showed us how to play guitar or play that riff. But we'll actually have more of those as well. But June 2nd, keep an eye out for that. And we'll continue to roll out items. We're also developing a learning management system to do asynchronous learning. So we'll have like a virtual modern band training and so on.
So is the plan to also have like virtual dorm rooms for the summer conference? So you have your virtual live and then the virtual. Okay. Right. All right. Just want to make sure as we go through.
I mean, it's been interesting. It's been fun because part of it is the community building and the other part's the professional learning thing. But we're going to definitely hook it up. So it'll be fun. Got to do something.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry to keep you on the spot, Steve, but I do have a second question. What level of access will districts and teachers have to these resources? Is it going to be any school district or only ones that meet certain criteria, like maybe districts they've worked with in the past? In other words, is it going to be free and open to everyone, or is there some sort of gating feature to that or something along those lines?
It's going to be free and open to everyone. So that's the crucial aspect of this. So there are a couple things. Our resources are already free. So all you have to do is go to 2 locations. Go into YouTube, type in Little Kids Rock, and we've teleported many of our lessons there. So you don't actually have to go into the Jam Zone, which is on our website at littlekidsrock.org. So if you go into YouTube, type in Little Kids Rock, you'll find the virtual lessons. We've learned from our data that we're narrowing our lessons down into shorter periods of time. So it's going to be like little snippets of, instead of like, we started with half-hour lessons and realizing that's not working for people. As like Bruce, you were saying, you could do Zoom, but it's a whole different beast, you know? So we've narrowed our lessons down to more time appropriate. So 10 minutes or less, even so, right? And oh, by the way, if you want to connect, if you have questions, send me an email at svens. So Steve, you know, svens at littlekidsrock.org. It's another way to reach me.
Thank you so much, Steve. And this next question might be more for Brandon, but obviously open to anyone. What sort of professional development are folks doing for their teaching artists to help with the transition into online learning?
I can tell you for our teachers, we're teaching them, they're learning different types of production tools. So Soundtrap, as you mentioned before, they already know Logic, Fruity Loops, just different types of, you know, production tools for our producers. Outside of that, you know, for us, it's really continue on like learning our day to day, like really trying to navigate through the music industry right now, because we're using, you know, real professionals to come in and teach our students. So I'm learning something new just based on what's been going on a day-to-day basis. But really for our hands-on instructors, it's just different types of production tools. And I don't know, Steve, I saw you nodding. I don't know if you wanted to add on to that or not.
No, I mean, it seems like some of those platforms are really helpful. Like I know like Soundtrap, the great thing about that is that it could go across the, you know, Android, Mac, and so on. You can also collaborate really fluidly. Some platforms are not so helpful. Like if I know that some folks are using Acapella, but that's very linear, doesn't work well on Android, works well. Yeah, so yeah, totally. Yeah, Brandon, it's just a whole new world.
Yeah, this is David. I mean, we're going through similar circumstances. I mean, we're taking Grammy Camp online, which is a huge challenge to have 8 career tracks that we're dealing with. It's usually very, very collaborative, and we integrate all of those tracks together to making it virtual. The fortunate thing is we also have technology tracks, and the guys that are teaching those tracks are also music professionals, and so they're working with the tracks that are business related and the tracks that are performance related to get everyone more involved in what platforms are available and which is the best platform to use for this particular thing. It's it is a new world, and what we're also thinking is, how can we take this after things do go back to sort of normalcy and we start doing Grammy Camp Live, how can we continue to use what we're learning now to expand instruction to more online during the school year instead of just during the summer at Grammy Camp?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, in the sense of what are these things that we did live, now we're doing virtual. What are these things that are going to carry over? And you have this this great, you know, but in the essence, you know, and this goes to our next question, it can create this digital divide with people. I remember, and I told this story before here, I received an email from my kid's school district that said, you know, two questions, you know, do you have access to the internet and do you have access to technology? And I was like, you know, like laptops and things like that. And I was like, yeah, of course. Why are they even sending this? And then you realize that's not the reality for urban areas and even rural areas. And the question that we received was all of the distance virtual learning stuff that people is doing is fantastic, but what are folks doing to address the very real digital divide within most of the underserved communities in our country during the next 6 to 10 months? And I can give 2 quick examples of that. And then if anyone else wants to add in. One, I know for the school district of Philadelphia, they distributed around 50,000 Chromebooks in a very short period of time, as well as working with Comcast to get hotspots out to people that needed access to the internet. And I know in the state of Maine, with Jason Anderson, that was on last week, we talked about what they're doing in these rural areas that struggle in the same vein, just not to the density of population. They too distributed Chromebooks. They were working with hotspots. They were also opening up like local communities that would have normally had like a public Wi-Fi, like a library or something like that, asking those groups to turn it on. So that way people could at least get in the proximity of the building in order to gain Wi-Fi. So I think there's a lot of creative solutions, but I think it's one of the challenges that we're going to face as a country about this have and have nots, but in this social or in this digital divide age. So I don't know, does anyone else have any comments for that?
Yeah, I mean, I could tap into that. I know that we've been having conversations with school districts, like in particular, creating like packets that are PDFs that could be delivered through either the school administrator or the teacher to help students learn during this time if they don't have connectivity. Another thing is we're looking at, and we're partnered with a couple of urban districts that have like television stations, and like working with them in terms of like delivering little snippets of music learning through with the, you know, in concert with the packet. So, because one of the things I've spent my entire career in historic South Central Los Angeles as a music teacher, and then also opening a school, Quincy Jones Elementary. And one of the things I've learned is like there's a TV there, even though many times the connectivity thing is like an issue, or they have a computer, they don't have headphones, or they don't have, you know, there's so many variables.
And I want to just piggyback on this. I think we need to really take a step back. The school district of Philadelphia did do a great job with delivering Chromebooks to a majority of their high school students. But ultimately, I believe within that first week that they started their online programming, almost half of the students did not attend or did not participate. And I think we have to be realistic and mindful of the fact that certain homes and certain communities may not be conducive to online learning. I think when we go into the fall and we're looking at that blended model, I think it's super critical for us on this panel, for people in general, to really respect and understand and value the importance of community centers. And I think that outside of the home, these community centers, whether they're the Boys and Girls Club of each city or other local community organizations, we need to really partner and lean on them a bit, because I think that they're going to be critical in really helping with that divide that students may have within their homes if they're not able to get to school on a daily basis.
And
Even the schools, right?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, for both Steve and Brandon, I think it's for us, we've been kind of really pushing the kind of expectation for us, or the baseline for us is that the students have a very much so limit on the devices, but also Wi-Fi. So we've really kind of pushed a lot of stuff that we could do. We could push out that through the smartphone. So like Soundtrap being one, Steve, you gave a really great example of like Soundtrap, you can use it on iPhone or the Android, but like some other, platform, DAW, may not be good for smartphones. It has to be Chrome, or it has to be iPad, or what have you. So like there's that. But I think it's also beyond that. What we've also been hearing is that it's also digital device, also Wi-Fi device, but it's also the technological literacy divide. So some parents may not have the knowledge or the resource to really even find out, even they get the free account, even get the free Chromebook, they may not be able to go to that. So there's a lot of empathy that we also have to really kind of do that. Also, it's a technological device, but also like the language divide as well. So I think we really need to be mindful for all of us to do that. And really, again, to Brandon's point, really partnering with everybody. It's not just the music ed, it's the community center, it's the library, it's the lateral, but also in so many ways. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that too, because Brandon, you really struck a chord with me in terms of when you said that that sometimes the home environment is one that's not conducive to this online learning that we've gone into. And that's very true. And I think sociologically, even just to take it bigger than that, we need to begin to think about and trying to address, I think, something that is not emphasized enough, that the child's first and most important teacher is the parent. And we have to find a way to engage parents so that we can help them help their children. And then that makes our lives a lot easier, because then kids are coming to school, they're coming to the community centers, they're coming to our programs more prepared to intake the type of information that we're trying to give them. So, I mean, that was one of the things that when I began teaching, I'm kind of the old guy on this panel. When I began teaching in 1971, I found very quickly that I needed to teach more than quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes. That there were kids there there were students that I had in a high school who had never had a sit-down dinner and knew what to do with utensils. And so those are things that we need to address. I mean, our society has changed quite a bit since the 40s and 50s, and so but in many cases, our educational community nationwide, they're still thinking like the 40s and 50s, and the situation is not the same.
Bruce, I just want to turn to see if you have any final comments, because our end of the hour is up. It always goes very quickly, and I just want to see if you had anything else to add, and then we'll close it up here.
No, thanks. Yeah, actually, one last thing. I mean, engaging with other community groups is really key. There's a group in Philadelphia called Mighty Writers, who are doing a lot of work with young kids in the community around literacy skills. But they've kind of expanded the outreach, particularly because they're in urban areas. They're addressing the really big challenges of the digital divide, and there's a lot of community groups and educational groups all sort of working together, because there's a lot of overlap. So thanks again for having me be a part of this today.
Of course, and I just want to give a big thank you to our panelist today, David Sears from the Grammy Museum Foundation. I got it right that time. It's the museum music thing that throws me off a little bit. Steve Benz from Little Kids Rock, Chio Feinler from Save the Music Foundation, Brandon Pankey from Dash and Live Nation Urban, and Bruce Warren from WXPN. Just to let everybody know, we're going to be taking the week off next week with Memorial Day weekend coming up. So we'll be taking a break next week, but we'll be back with you the following week. And tomorrow, our masterclass series continues at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with Sophia Basilar and her special guest composer and conductor, Francisco Nunez. You can watch live through GMC's Facebook and Instagram pages. That's 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. I just want to give one more shout out to our panelists and for joining us today. And thank you so much for everybody that watch and will watch this broadcast. Hopefully you found it useful, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.